All right, let's talk about gays or something. I don't know. This guy's mad about people that aren't straight white males being in his video games. Escapism's dead. You can't escape because I want to live the exact same life I live now. That's what escapism is. Let's go.
It's been quite a while since I've made a gaming is dying video, and something
because gaming has not been dying.
I've been thinking about more and more over the past year is the death of a reason or another. Everything political, with many people telling me that
hold on, let me scrub this real quick. Are we just gonna look at video game stuff in the background the whole time? Okay, yeah, I figured. All right. I didn't know if we were going to get to something else.
As society has made the slow march into making literally everything political.
Literally everything.
With many people simply telling you that everything is political. Yeah.
I'm interested in what games you did not think were political in the past that you like.
Out of the other side of their mouth also telling me that I'm making things political when everything's political. So figure that one out. If they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all.
Spyro political?
All right. So as escapism slowly dies, so does my joy for video games.
I think what you're experiencing is being an adult and understanding themes. Obviously not great, but just a little bit better than you did when you were a baby.
Though obviously there's many reasons why I've slowly become apathetic over time. But let's just try to focus on escapism this episode. But before I get into this any further, let's get to this video's sponsor.
Fuck off. God, what a fucking loser, dude. Just eat my ass.
Into this, immersion being a big factor. And obviously this entire subject is highly subjective. What bothers me probably doesn't bother most people, which is evident by the countless backlash I've received for complaining about literally anything in video games. Because if you're told something's a masterpiece, it absolutely is, no question. And I do.
God of War, everybody says it was really good. It was good, wasn't it? I didn't play the new one, but I played the last one. It was great. And I don't fucking like games like that, really. But it had a good story, it had really good gameplay loops.
I do want to address that this is not specifically going to be a Dead Space remake evaluation type of thing. I talked about it for about 5 minutes in my Last of Us episode 3.
What did you think Dead Space was about the first time? Or the movie Alien? Like, what?
Review, and I will be retreading a couple of those points for this video, but it's not specifically about that game. There's definitely much more woke games than Dead Space Remake, but
woke?
It was still bad enough to catch my attention, that's for sure.
Woke?
So let's get to the first point of contention and the one that inspired this video. Modern politics. It's basically impossible to escape progressive ideology in any modern AAA game and in a lot of indie games as well.
Do you know why? Conservatives aren't creative or curious people. They don't make interesting things. That's not our fault. That's your fault. You are to blame for your lack of creativity or interesting things to say. Conservative media sucks, dude. Make a good thing. Make an apolitical good thing. And people will enjoy it then. You start putting your politics into it and people will like it. But, I wonder why progressive games are made. To resounding success, financially and otherwise. How do you know you can ignore someone's take right off the bat? Use the word woke unironically. True.
Worse yet, a lot of leftists and grifters pretending to be centrist or right-leaning attempt to gaslight us by debating what the term woke even means.
Wait, who are those people who are pretending to be right-wing but are actually fucking left-wing? Send me some of those people.
To me, woke represents any political messaging, subliminal or not, that pushes these modern progressive ideals.
Modern ideals. Modern ideals. Yes. Modern ideals. Yep. The people who live in this culture are going to sometimes slip in their culture into things they make. Yeah.
This covers a pretty vast spectrum, which is why there's been so much pushback from these so-called centrists. And look, my personal definition is broad on purpose, because sometimes subliminal messaging is even more important than the stuff vomited in your face. The thing is, we have now become so used to these devs pushing harder and harder that now when some...
This is the guy, by the way, I assume. He's using his own footage. Synthetic man.
the more anticipated.
Yeah, like, look at this fucking guy. This is the type of guy we're dealing with. Just fucking sitting in his beige room with his beige face and his beige hair, waiting for beige people to come on his screen.
Hated games have dialed it back a step or two. People are not pretending it doesn't count as woke anymore.
I would love to talk to this guy. What's his fucking name? Synthetic Man. I had already forgotten it, dude. You want to talk about woke stuff? Jesus Christ.
Right? I've talked about the Overton window shifting a bunch of times. I'm getting tired of using that term, but the point is, we have become so used to the absurd, nearly parody tier leftist crap like Velma or The Last of Us Part 2, that when something like God of War Ragnarok or the Dead Space remake shows up, people are debating whether or not it's woke at all. Even when those very same changes were done to something like Rings of Power, right? Like
why is that woke?
Swapping characters or making some of the female characters absurdly powerful, even
making a god powerful,
better than men.
Even better than men. Oh no, not better than men. God, Jesus, what a fucking loser, dude. You're so pathetic to me. God.
This is woke for TV. Why is it not woke for video games? Well, that's a subject for a different video. The point is, when I see this stuff, especially when it's a
what is woke about this?
Remake, and it obviously wasn't in the original, then
what am I seeing that's supposed to be woke?
Obviously that's going to bother me because it was a change made on purpose by developers to push subliminal messaging, like the all-gender bathroom in Dead Space Remake. Unisex and all gender are not the same fucking thing, especially when they use the pedestrian icon that obviously represents trans people being like half male, half female or whatever. If it just said unisex, I honestly would not have given a fuck.
That's not true, you little pussy. They should put a gender-neutral bathroom sign? But it's a space station. There's black people on the corpo things? Are black people wokies?
And then there seems to be a different problem, and I don't know if this was due to...
What's this? I need to know what the woke Spyro thing is.
The YouTube policy changes around what is considered racism, but I've noticed more and more that a lot of people are completely fine with race swapping under certain contexts.
What? No, I don't really give a shit.
I don't really have enough data here to give you an answer as to why this is, but again, something that was complained about with Rings of Power is now completely fine with God of War Ragnarok, despite the fact that they're both based on white culture. And I am in no interest to debate what white means or what culture means.
What? But that makes you the pussy then. Because now, if you're talking about white culture, then we have to talk about what that even fucking means. So, I would love to have a conversation with this this guy about this topic.
The fact that anyone's even trying to debate those terms proves they're using the exact same tactics that the left does. And look, I'm not going to turn this into a fucking drama video, so I will end it there. But just keep an eye out for these anti-SJW types in the near future, because I feel like the tide is shifting once again on YouTube, where in a year or two, you might not even be allowed to talk about this shit anymore. My channel will probably be shadow banned. But for the moment, I would just advise paying very close...
I totally disagree with you, Boovine. Rings of Power was really good. The writing was really good. The characters were really good. All of it was great.
Close attention to the consistency of the creators that you enjoy watching, the consistency of their views specifically. This is not in any way me trying to start some kind of purity spiral to slowly radicalize people over time. I'm completely fine with my viewers having different views than me. It happens all the time. My like-dislike ratios are far below average.
Oh, really? No one fucking likes you? I'll do it too.
For any media content reviewer. No, what I'm doing is essentially gatekeeping, which of course has a very negative connotation amongst certain groups on the internet, but I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Okay. The entire point of gatekeeping is just to ensure that the people in your hobby are the people who actually care about said hobby.
They do care about the hobby. You just don't like their interpretation of it. So make your own games. You said buzzwords you refuse to define. You'd have to do more substantive content by just coming on screen and just singing the happy birthday song? No, I wouldn't.
The people who are invested in it and have a deep emotional attachment.
You have a deep emotional attachment to Spyro? And it's anti-wokeness?
Not the type of people...
You're such a fucking pussy, dude. I can't imagine crying about a video game.
People who are just there to grift or to slowly turn the hobby into what they want instead of just enjoying it for what it is, which has destroyed many, many subcultures over time.
Destroyed what subcultures? Nazis? What subculture has been destroyed?
That certain people have subverted fan bases or even movements and destroyed them from within. Now, since I've already derailed the entire purpose of this video, let's try and get back to examples.
Dude, this guy's fucking accent. Sounds so dumb to me. I think it's semi-Midwestern
of games where they just shoved politics where it didn't belong. Now, the most obvious recent example of this was Forspoken, which I feel like the only reason it was even made is to pad out Square Enix's ESG score. If they hadn't gotten funding from BlackRock, there's no way this would have ever seen the light of day. It's obvious that they had no idea what they actually wanted to make as a game. So
no one played the game. Why is this woke? What? She's black, so it's woke. It just is a bad game that I didn't want to play.
So seeing as the likely lengthy pre-production hadn't produced anything worthy of making a game, that's where ESG comes along and is like, okay, you need to have a black female protagonist on top of a culturally diverse fantasy world with no explanation as to how those people got there or how a librarian can be morbidly obese, and of course everyone has to be ugly as well. That goes without saying.
How a librarian could be morbidly obese?
So we can give you millions of dollars to make this inevitable flop. And so we're given Frey, who is an incredibly
I guess you can't have a fat librarian, which is like a pretty classic fantasy trope.
Sanitized 20-year-old orphan who, if you haven't played the game and only heard clips of her dialogue, you would think, well, she's not a stereotype, at the very least, except for the fact that she's committed 3 felonies, has spent a
Bro, why are you racist?
Considerable amount of money on sneakers despite living in a shithole. She works for a gang, and honestly, the list goes on. I covered it in my review if you're curious. So,
I thought that's what you liked, the depiction of black people to be. Why are you mad about that? Jesus Christ. So, I mean, I played the demo of it, and the light balance is really shit, and the gameplay just felt like shit. I mean, I just didn't like the game. I didn't think about this any further. I can't imagine Forspoken ruining your day.
So it's funny that her dialogue is written more like some kind of quirky Marvel movie mixed with a millennial white woman trying to write what Zoomers are like these days, and it just doesn't work in the least. And so to bring this back around to the escapism point, a big problem with this is that
there's no escapism involved in playing a black wizard or whatever she is. I don't know, sorcerer. She's got this. Those bangles are. They are magic and they talk.
Isekai stories are almost anti-escapism, at least for me. Conceptually, it should be the opposite, because it's a normal person being brought into some magical world and you get superpowers. And so on the surface level, you think, oh shit, that might actually be the perfect escapist story, because it's made for normies to pretend that they live in a fantasy world and have superpowers. Now here's the problem with that. One, you need to have a blank slate protagonist to make this even feasible. Or
I would tend to agree that you probably don't want voice protagonists for RPG or something, but that's not what they did. It just sucked, man. Then, like, I guess just you don't have to like the game. It's fine. I don't think a lot of people like this game. This isn't like a cultural touchstone we need to like really worry about. Like,
at least a protagonist that serves as a male or female
Gamers
power fantasy.
Like, these types of guys are just so fucking
picture
like
ourselves literally being this person.
Pathetic.
At least we
I
can
don't care.
look at
Dry
them as
dick,
a
just
sort
fucking
of
like,
idealized
you
version
know,
of ourselves,
punching walls.
used to be written. Now
Losers,
so many hero
dude.
characters are
Horribly
horribly
This guy
flawed.
wants to be fucking like Asmongold or something. This is bad content, man. I don't know. I don't know how people watch this shit and enjoy it.
And sometimes those flaws aren't even intentional, to make those characters feel more relatable, where in reality, it feels like the opposite for somebody like me, because I don't want to be this super flawed person. I don't want to be a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu either, but that certainly would be a step up from being completely unlikable, like Frey is. Another example of a game that kind of ruined my escapism is Far Cry 6. The Far Cry games are actually pretty okay as escapist fantasies because the characters are pretty much blank slates with the exception of Jason Brody, and even in his case, he didn't really talk that much, especially not during gameplay, so it's still pretty easy to insert ourselves in his shoes, and there's a sort of Ludo Kino aspect to it, to use kind of a cringy term, but I think it works in this case.
Ludo? I don't know what that means.
Where Jason is slowly desensitized to all the horrific violence over the course of the game, much the same as a gamer would be over the course of the game. You slowly get used to doing all this crazy shit, and it becomes normal for you. And that was actually pretty well handled, despite the fact that the story was more on the minimalist side of things, as it should be for a lot of video games. But as for Far Cry 2, 4, 5, and 6, the character you're playing as basically doesn't matter at all. And in Far Cry 5 specifically, you're not even really playing as a character, you make your own rookie. So then what happened with Far Cry 6? Well, they attempted to make a character again, and I literally can't remember his fucking name, and no, I'm not going to look it up because it kind of proves my point. And despite having
my poor memory proves the point of the game. I mean, I'm not playing these games either. I don't know why this matters. Far Cry 6 was bad because it's the 6th one.
Third-person cutscenes and having a lot more dialogue again, like Far Cry 3. The story felt like it was more about these smaller rebel groups that you unite together to form Libertad. And of course, these smaller groups were a reflection of the developers' ideology. Two of the groups in particular were pretty cringy, one of them being led by a lesbian couple, but not actually, as one of them transitioned into a man, and the quest line around this group is literally settling his debts with the person who transitioned him. You can't argue that that's not woke.
It's not woke. I mean, who gives a shit? Don't play the game then if you're opposed to trans people being in it.
We're taking the player hostage and forcing them to engage with something they probably don't even believe in.
First off, fucking not true. You're not hostage. It's a game. You little puss. Like, second of all, I mean, yeah, like them being exposed to it would help them learn that. That's fine. But also like, it's just a character in a game. Like, that's the character. If you don't like the character, that's fine. But that's what they decided to do? I don't understand why this is a broad critique on other stuff. I don't know where the rub is, man. I just can't be transphobic. I just can't like get to it. I can't access whatever part of his little fucking slim dick brain thinks this way. Like, why spend any energy on this video? Like, I can't. Like, just watching it is draining. Imagine making it.
And the other member of the couple is even worse. She's a psychotic bitch who thinks it's okay.
A psycho in a Far Cry game?
To kill people because they misgender your boyfriend. And I know at least one person's going to argue that I took context out of that scene because this blonde woman apparently ran some kind of academy for brainwashing people, which again just feels like pure projection on the developer's part, as we all know what ideology is being fed to people in American universities, at the very least. Not to say it can't go both ways. But this bitch is just straight up unlikable. She puts a gun to a horse's head. No, that's not a zebra, it's just painted to look like one. And is obviously unstable to any normal person watching this shit, but
it's Far Cry. They're all like that. Why is this particular one making you mad? Have you played Far Cry? There's fucking crazy people in it. That's like the point. They're loons, and they have guns, and you gotta go shoot with them. Also, he's mad that there's, like, people of color in this game. It's a game in a place where there's more people of color than there are fucking white folks. That's where it takes place. Was he mad about Just Cause? Like,
but because she's LGBT, we're supposed to let it slide.
Are we supposed to let it slide? It looks like they're having some conflict in this scene.
The other cringy group were the Zoomer communists, and I'm not even saying Zoomer as an insult here. That was the entire point of their group. And they reunite with the original communist revolutionaries, which obviously the country of Yara was just supposed to be Cuba, so you can see where the parallels are there. And
so they're telling a story about Cuba, which has a rich history of communist fucking revolutionary discussions, and they have these traditions that conflict each other generationally. Seems like a viable topic of conversation.
And in a brief moment of lucidity, the communists from the 60s realized that their Zoomer comrades are more radical than they are, basically wanting to burn everything to the ground. But I don't think that's what the messaging was in the cutscenes. That's the weird fucking part. A huge criticism of Ubisoft games from both the left and the right is that they never commit to any kind
Does he think Zoomers were in charge of making that game?
of real political messaging in their games. They don't seem to follow an ideology left or right, trying to play down the center. A bunch of game journalists threw a hissy fit over Far Cry 5 for this very reason, because originally they thought it was going to be an anti-Christian game. So all the fedora-tipping atheists were getting a hard-on at the prospect of yet another piece of propaganda demonizing one specific religion because they hate their dads.
Their dads. My dad wasn't religious either. In fact, my dad, who I don't like, when he got this is one of my favorite stories from him, because it's a thing that I agree with. He used to go to church with his parents, my grandparents, because America, although they never talk about it. They went to church. My dad had left community college and gotten a job at like a plant, not a power plant, but a plant. He worked shift work at a plant for years and years, and his first paycheck was better than the paychecks he had been getting. And the priest or pastor or whoever the fuck came up to him at the end of it and was like, "Hey, we know that you're getting, you have a higher salary now, so we were hoping that your donation to the church would also increase. We're looking forward to that." My dad didn't like that, and so he wrote his last tithe to the church. Apparently he gave him a check and said, "This is going to be my last one," and he walked out and he never went back. Which I actually think is kind of good. Although he has it from a "that's my money" perspective, but it is his money, so whatever.
And then it turns out
Far Cry isn't about Christian. I don't know. I never had any expectation for Far Cry 5. Isn't that the one with the cultist guy at the end, or not the end, the whole time?
No, it was just about a crazy cult, and there's plenty of good Christian dudes in Montana, which is much more true to real life. The problem is with Far Cry 6, they kind of went in the opposite direction.
But the only game this guy can play anymore is Spyro.
Didn't commit all the way. I mean, it certainly is much more pro-leftist than previous Far Cry games, but it has this ludo-narrative dissonance problem where you're supposed to be the freedom fighters, yet you kill hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the course of the game, many of them being women, by the way, which is something I pointed out in my original review.
You can kill women if they're Nazis? Like, what do you mean? You can kill them.
So is Ubisoft secretly based, saying we should treat men and women the same in every scenario, including chopping their heads off with a machete?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Chop ladies in video games heads off with machetes if they allow you to chop heads off with machetes and you want to do that. I don't give a fuck. Don't care. What a weird fucking argument, I guess.
Somehow I don't think that's the message they were going for.
Well, what do
now,
you...
this
what?
might...
Why? What? What does he think? Does he this guy just watches Fox News all day. Like, what the fuck?
Be beating a dead horse, but obviously The Last of Us Part 2 is probably the most infamous example of being unable to escape propaganda.
I don't want to know the fucking
in modern games.
I don't want to know the spoilers for this. I'm gonna skip this section because I don't care. He's just gonna say the same shit. I haven't played it yet.
Have huge political undertones like BioShock.
Yep, anti-corporate.
Right? It's just that the nature of the politics have become so cringe and quite literally gay. Now to get
They can be gay. Gay people play video games, and they are in stories. Surprise.
Get to the next major issue that is destroying escapism.
It's the same as Dave assuming leftist means you can't criticize women or anything ever? I don't know. Some women are dumb as shit.
In general have just become soulless cash grabs.
Not every woman is a worthless piece of shit, though. That's the difference between me and a... This is the difference between me and a conservative. A conservative thinks every woman is a worthless piece of shit, and I only think some people are. Some of them happen to be women. Every conservative is a worthless piece of shit, though. But you don't have to be.
They're impressive at face value, but real fans of the original will notice the many flaws beneath the surface. I already brought up Dead Space Remake at the beginning of the video, and even ignoring all the wokeness stuff, there's plenty of other minor flaws that game has, which are obvious if you recently played the original.
Last of Us 2 ends at 17:18. Go back, it's worth I swear. I mean, I'm only going back.
Can cut these guys some slack because on some level I do believe that there's nothing wrong with making your creative vision as long as it's a unique IP that you came up with. But it is a shame when you have a game like A Hat in Time, which on the surface you're just playing as a little girl in a collectathon 3D platformer adventure, and it's a great game. I'd recommend it to anybody who's a fan of the genre. But of course, there is a trans flag in the game.
Oh, no.
And look, I've now had to cut 2 rants too edgy for YouTube about this specific issue. So I'll just try and put it as plainly as possible. At best, this is widely misplaced virtue signaling, which is completely worthless. It means nothing, but...
Okay, that's fine.
At least Twitter can be happy, right? And at worst, it's grooming, plain and simple.
It's grooming?
This is a game for children, and
you played it. What do you mean?
Yes, it is mainly enjoyed by man-children and likely a lot of trans women who want to be children or have relations with children, but it does not...
I mean, that's it right there. Pretty easy. No. Okay. Go to 18. Fucking, I don't know. I was gonna say also has a small dick. I didn't put that in there. I don't know who looks at those things. For the 1000th time, you are vastly more likely to be assaulted by a priest than a trans person, and just a man. I told you it was worth it. Dude's unhinged. All right, I'm gonna keep going.
Because these developers don't understand that animation and sound design are extremely important to horror. If something sounds goofy or looks goofy, boom, immersion is destroyed. So to try to get back to my main point, as I've been just rambling for likely over 30 minutes at this point, all of this stuff destroys my escapism. Whether it's the wokeness...
I cut 20 minutes of rambling.
Or the destroying of my childhood games, and making shitty sequels with Tumblrina tier characters. It's hard for me to just get lost in a game anymore, man. And I think this...
Do you think that that could be your fucking brain poisoning your own experience of this because you're too much of a pussy to hear other people's fucking opinions on this shit?
This is the reason why I had so much backlash. My Starfield is going to be a disappointment video. Because Bethesda games really do offer that unique immersion angle that most other games don't. Even if they do have some amount of subliminal messaging in them. And maybe this isn't the best example, seeing as it's an Obsidian game, but I think it still counts. Fallout New Vegas obviously offered a bunch of different ideologies in that game. And unlike pretty much any other game, you could pick which ideology you sided with.
But yeah, it's an RPG. That's not. Yeah, it's different.
And take that faction to victory, to win the Hoover Dam and win.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's good though.
Over Vegas, right? Now, if I remember correctly, Chris Avallone actually didn't want you to be able to play as the Legion, which kind of sucks. But from what I understand, Josh Sawyer knew that as the player, especially in an open world RPG, you should have the ability to play as the bad guys. In the Legion,
you recognize them as the bad guys.
Unlike the Enclave in Fallout 3, actually did have some complexity to them. Not enough, and as many players know, a bunch of Legion quests were actually cut from the game and there's mods to restore them. But it was still way more complexity than we've seen from the vast majority of evil choices in games up until that point. And that's what made Fallout New Vegas so interesting, is that you really could make a compelling argument for any of the factions being the right choice.
He's talking about
Vegas.
Fallout New Vegas?
Now, if you pick NCR, I'm going to call you a Redditor, but...
Cool, bro. All right, I'm done. I just can't even fucking listen to this guy anymore. If you are a person who gets really fucking triggered by the inclusion of people that don't look or resemble you in a video game... Man, like there's such a difference between like does this guy get triggered by Wolfenstein? Like there's so many, yeah, I was gonna say there's so many indie games that you could point to that are like,
it's cold.
That are like at least woke enough to where you'd be like, okay, this is just, there's a whole game about murdering fascists. Zerg Daddy, thanks for following it. Tonight We Riot. Like, there's explicit games about these things. But, like, man, that's what it is about art. People want these games because it resembles their fucking lives. You're trapped in the past, man. The world is passing you by, and you have like, a lonely little existence. Not a lot of friends. Clearly no fucking partner or anything like This guy is just a fucking loser. I can't. He's gamers that like want white dudes and big titty bitches and that's it in their video games. Like just shock me to no end and tire me out. Why is that the thing that you just like? I need that. I need this. He probably calls Wolfenstein woke. Murdering Nazis is woke.